My name is Keisha. I'm 34 years old, and I've always been the responsible one, the one who handles the financial obligations. My sister Simone and her indolent husband recently moved back into our parents' residence and expected me to abandon a pivotal career project to care for their children so they could take a trip to Miami. When I declined, my own father branded me selfish and insignificant. I simply offered a smile and stated, "I'll manage it." That very night, I made two crucial phone calls, one to terminate the electricity supply to the house, and another to the bank to halt the mortgage payments, which I had been secretly covering for 3 years. Before I recount further events, please share your viewing location in the comments below. If you've ever found yourself as the sole sensible adult in a household of dependents, please like and subscribe. All I desired was a moment of respite, to simply remove my shoes. That was my only wish. I am Keisha, 34 years old, and I had just concluded a 12-hour workday in a high-rise boardroom, finalizing a $200 million development agreement for my corporation. I held the position of vice president and managed a team of 50 individuals. By all accounts, I was successful. However, as I guided my vehicle into the driveway of my parents' expansive estate in Dakar, an overwhelming sense of exhaustion washed over me. It was a fatigue that permeated to my very core. The residence was an elegant, two-story brick colonial situated in one of Atlanta's most coveted African American enclaves, a neighborhood synonymous with established wealth and black excellence, a place that should have represented a haven. The instant I opened the front door, that perception was irrevocably shattered. The foyer, typically immaculate with its gleaming hardwood floors, resembled a chaotic battleground. Expensive illuminated sneakers lay carelessly strewn near the entrance, alongside a heap of empty PR packages addressed to my sister Simone. For the past 3 years, she had pursued a career as a brand influencer, a role that apparently entailed receiving complimentary items without any personal expenditure, all while accumulating debt. I navigated around a sticky patch on the floor, my heel catching on a discarded lightsaber. Simone, her husband Chad, and their 2 children had taken up residence a month prior, following an eviction from their downtown apartment. Their plea was a temporary arrangement, just until we get back on our feet. As I entered the living room, my jaw involuntarily clenched. This was intended to be my sanctuary, or at least it was supposed to be. I was responsible for the mortgage, the utilities, and the household provisions. Yet my parents' living room, which was also my living room, had undergone a dramatic transformation. A professional microphone on a boom stand, complete with a pop filter, was conspicuously positioned in a corner. 2 substantial ring lights leaned against the wall. Chad was once again embarking on one of his ambitious podcast ventures. His preceding endeavor, a direct-to-consumer business selling beard oils, had cost my parents $20,000, funds I knew they were in no position to spare. The children, aged 4 and 6, were not visible, but their disruptive presence was evident everywhere. Crayon marks marred the cream-colored sofa, and a half-eaten lollipop was adhered to the Persian rug. I exhaled deeply, placing my briefcase by the door. I had been living here for the past 3 years, ever since my father. Ever since he solicited my assistance, I had returned to be their savior, the dutiful daughter. However, observing the surrounding disarray, I recognized that I was not functioning as a daughter, but merely as a service provider. I proceeded to the kitchen, yearning for a glass of water and a mere 5 minutes of silence before the inevitable drama commenced. I should have anticipated that even that small reprieve would be denied. The kitchen was meant to be my safe zone, the sole area my sister had not thoroughly compromised with her lifestyle brand. I entered, placed my keys on the granite island, and finally allowed myself to exhale. My gaze fell upon a disorganized assortment of mail, encompassing bills and catalogues. At the very top lay an envelope that sent a chill down my spine, a stark red missive from Georgia Power. Across its face, in bold, all-caps lettering, were 2 words. Past due. I picked it up, my fingers suddenly numb. It wasn't merely past due, it was a final disconnection notice. The electricity was slated to be cut off the following day. This was inconceivable. I managed the finances. I was the one preventing this entire household from collapsing. I retrieved my phone, my thumb swiftly navigating to my banking application. I reviewed my transfer history. There it was, unequivocally clear. 5 days prior, a wire transfer of $4,000 had been sent to my father's account, designated as August household expenses. That sum was intended for the mortgage, water, gas, and precisely this electricity bill. A familiar cold resentment began to surface. I had just dedicated my day to overseeing a $200 million project, and my family couldn't even manage to pay a simple utility bill with funds I had provided. Before I could contact my father, my mother, Brenda, entered the kitchen with a flourish. She made no attempt to acknowledge me or the palpable exhaustion radiating from me. Instead, she proceeded directly to the sub-zero refrigerator, pulled both doors open, and emitted a drawn-out, dramatic sigh. "Keisha, you're finally home," she announced, her tone laced with irritation. "This refrigerator is completely barren. There's absolutely nothing in here for me to prepare for dinner. Simone's children are hungry, and you didn't even bother to stop for groceries." I stared at her, one hand clutching a disconnection notice, the other displaying proof of a $4,000 transfer. She was complaining about an empty refrigerator. The sheer audacity was staggering. I shifted my gaze from her impeccably coiffed hair to the crimson envelope. The initial piece of the puzzle fell into place. Holding the red envelope between my thumb and forefinger, I stated, "Groceries are a secondary concern, Mother. This is a disconnection notice. The power is scheduled to be shut off tomorrow." I maintained an unwavering tone, a skill honed in adversarial boardrooms. "I transferred $4,000 to Dad's account on Monday. That money was specifically allocated for the mortgage and utilities. Where did it go?" My mother, Brenda, showed a flicker of discomposure. She avoided my gaze, busying herself with rearranging the empty grocery list on the counter. "Well, you know, Keisha," she began, "having 4 extra individuals in the house is quite expensive. The water bill was higher, the children are perpetually hungry, and Chad requires his specialized coffee." "My goodness, Keisha, are you serious?" Simone's voice cut through the air preceding her physical arrival. She entered the kitchen enveloped in an aura of expensive perfume and a silk loungewear set that likely cost more than my car payment. She appeared ready for a fashion spread, not a Tuesday evening at her parents' home. "You've been home for 5 minutes and you're already harping about money. It's just a power bill. Relax." I turned to confront my sister. The contrast between us was almost comical. I was still clad in my charcoal grey business suit, exhausted from a 12-hour workday. She was swathed in pale pink silk, not a hair out of place. "It's not just a power bill, Simone," I corrected, my voice firm. "It's a disconnection notice, and the issue isn't the bill itself. It's the $4,000 I gave Dad to cover all household expenses. It's vanished in 5 days. I want to know where it went." I directed my question to Brenda. There was no escape. My mother's eyes flickered towards Simone, then to the floor, and finally back to me. "Well," she stammered, twisting the hem of her apron, it was an emergency." "An emergency?" My mind raced. "Is one of the children ill? Is something wrong with the car?" No, nothing like that," Brenda interjected quickly, wringing her hands. "It's just that Simone needed some things." I turned my attention to Simone, who was suddenly engrossed in examining her perfect manicure. What things, Mother? What kind of emergency costs $4,000? Simone needed new outfits. Brenda finally blurted out, her voice elevated and defensive. She has that important networking conference in Miami this weekend. She's building her personal brand. She has to look the part, Kesha. You can't build a brand if you appear impoverished. I stood there, utterly dumbfounded. My $4,000, the funds meant to keep the lights on and the water running, had been expended on clothing for my unemployed sister's networking excursion. Before I could even process the depth of this betrayal, a new voice joined the conversation, a voice that invariably grated on my nerves. What's all the commotion downstairs? Chad, Simone's husband, drifted down the stairs. I'm trying to record a podcast intro. He was 31, and in the years since he began dating my sister, I had never seen him in anything other than expensive athleisure wear. He was a white man who seemed to believe he had married into royalty, completely oblivious to the fact that he was merely another mouth to feed. He ambled over to the kitchen island, selected an apple, and took a loud, ostentatious bite. Listen, Keisha, he stated, his voice imbued with the lazy condescension he so expertly employed. You should be grateful you get to reside in a home with such a loving family. He gestured around the kitchen as if he were the proprietor. I mean, you're just a project manager, correct? You shuffle papers around. Simone and I are creating a legacy. We're building a brand. Don't get so worked up over a few dollars. A few dollars? $4,000? My entire body stiffened. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of this man, this freeloader who was subsisting on my parents' dime, which in turn meant he was subsisting on mine, was breathtaking. He had the audacity to belittle my career, the very career that was providing the roof over his head and the apple in his hand. Those few dollars are my salary, Chad, I responded, my voice dangerously low, and I am not just staying here. I placed the red envelope on the counter with a sharp tap. I pay the bills, every single one of them, and I am not merely residing here, as you so magnanimously put it. Chad merely smirked, entirely unfazed. He was accustomed to my mother and sister defending him. He took another bite of the apple. Oh, really? He challenged, his tone mocking. You don't own this house. You're simply staying at your parents' place, same as us. At least we have a family. What do you have, Keisha? Late nights at the office. Chad's taunting words hung in the kitchen air, sharper and more painful than a physical blow. Oh, really? You don't own this house. You're just staying in your parents' place, same as us. At least we have a family. What do you have, Keisha? Late nights at the office? Every head in the room turned. My mother, my sister, even Chad, who appeared immensely proud of himself for delivering such a cutting remark. But I didn't look at them. My eyes found my father, David, who had been standing silently in the dining room doorway, observing the entire exchange. He was the patriarch, the man whose opinion was law in this household, the man I had idolized, the man I was secretly protecting, the man whose honor I was paying $4,000 a month to preserve. Dad, I said, my voice quiet, breaking the oppressive silence. Are you just going to stand there? Are you going to let him say that to me? This was the moment for him to intervene, to be the father he was meant to be, to put this disrespectful freeloader in his place, to defend his daughter, the one single-handedly preserving his legacy. My father looked at me. His eyes, usually so full of authority, flickered. I detected a fleeting glimpse of something, perhaps shame or simply discomfort. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His gaze darted away from mine, settling on my mother. He cleared his throat. I held my breath, waiting. Brenda. he said, his voice abruptly businesslike, completely disregarding my question. Did you remember to call Reverend Johnson about the building fund meeting? We can't be late for that tonight, don't forget. And just like that, he was gone. He turned his back on me on the entire confrontation and walked into the dining room. His silence was a deafening confirmation. He had made his choice. In his eyes, I was no different from them. I was merely a guest. My contribution, my sacrifice meant nothing. It was simply an inconvenient truth to be ignored. Chad's smirk widened. He knew he had won. He had openly disrespected me, and my own father had tacitly sided with him through his silence. The foundation I believed I was standing on had crumbled into dust. My father's deliberate deflection was a coward's maneuver, but my mother's reaction was the final agonizing blow. Brenda, who moments before had been wringing her hands in feigned distress, brightened instantly. She seized the change of subject like a drowning person clutching a life raft. "Oh, that's right, David. Thank you for reminding me," she chimed in, her voice suddenly light and airy. Reverend Johnson also wanted to discuss the silent auction for the new building fund. I must make a note of that. She bustled over to the junk drawer, retrieving a notepad and pen. Suddenly, she was the picture of a busy, important matriarch with a packed social calendar. The crisis had passed. The uncomfortable topic of finances and disconnection notices had been banished, replaced by the far more respectable subject of church matters. David's silence had been a betrayal, but Brenda's active complicity was a declaration of war. She had eagerly assisted him in erecting the wall that excluded me. She had validated Chad's insult. I stood there, frozen in the middle of my own kitchen. I looked at Chad, who was now finishing his apple, that smug, indolent smirk still plastered on his face. He had triumphed. He had labeled me a freeloader in the very house I was funding, and my parents had, in essence, concurred. "You're just staying here." His words echoed in my mind. "You don't own this house." And David and Brenda, the two individuals I was actively rescuing from financial ruin, had just corroborated his assertion. By refusing to defend me, by refusing to state the truth, they had aligned themselves with the parasite over their own daughter. In their estimation, I was merely a guest, an inconvenient, long-term guest with a lucrative salary, a guest expected to subsidize their lifestyle, fund their favored child's shopping sprees, and keep the utilities operational, all while being grateful for the privilege of residing there. I observed the four of them. David, now engrossed in perusing the mail he had ignored all evening. Brenda, scribbling furiously on her notepad. Simone, whispering and giggling with Chad. The tension already forgotten, her victory secured. This was their family, a tightly knit unit, constructed on a foundation of secrets, appearances, and shared entitlement. And I was the outsider, the provider, the bank. The profound, icy realization washed over me, numbing the initial sting of hurt. It was a feeling deeper than betrayal. It was a sense of finality. In every meaningful aspect, I was completely and utterly alone in this house. I simply stared at my father. He refused to meet my gaze, deliberately studying a section of the dining room wall as if it held the most captivating subject he had ever encountered. The silence in the kitchen was suffocating, punctuated only by the sound of Brenda nervously shuffling her notepad and Chad's disgustingly satisfied chewing. My father, the patriarch, the man who demanded deference, had just allowed his son-in-law, a man living off my earnings, to call me a worthless freeloader in my own home, and he uttered not a word. My mind drifted back. I wasn't living here out of desire. I wasn't here because I couldn't afford my own place. I was here because of a desperate phone call 3 years prior. It all came flooding back. It wasn't a sunny afternoon like this one. It was a cold, rainy Tuesday in November. I was at my office, about to depart, when my father called. His voice was thick, strained. "Keisha, can you meet me? Please don't tell your mother, meet me at Chastain Park. I need to talk to you." I drove there, my stomach churning with apprehension, fearing someone was ill or worse. I found him seated in his car, a luxury sedan I now knew he couldn't afford. When I tapped on his window, he exited and climbed into my passenger seat, a maneuver so unusual it startled me. And then my father, David, the proudest man I had ever known, the former bank executive, completely broke down. He didn't just weep, he sobbed. He held his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking as he confessed the secret he had kept from everyone for 6 months. He wasn't merely retired, he was ruined. "I made some poor investments, Keisha," he whispered, his face pale with shame. He hadn't just made poor investments. He had liquidated his entire retirement portfolio, his pension payout, everything, and poured it into a high-yield cryptocurrency scam. "It's all gone," he choked out, staring at the rain streaking my windshield. "Everything, the 401k, the stocks, $500,000, Kesha, it's gone." He looked at me, his eyes red and desperate. "And God forgive me, I also lost the $20,000 I had set aside for Simone's business fund. It's all gone." I stared at him, the rain hammering against the car roof. Ruined, $500,000 vanished. But he wasn't finished. The confession was only just beginning. "The bank, Keisha. The bank is calling," he stammered, tears now mingling with the condensation on the windows. I took out a second mortgage against the house to fund the last investment. I was so certain I could win it all back. Now they're initiating foreclosure proceedings. We're going to lose the house, baby. Your grandparents' house. The house wasn't merely a structure, it was the family legacy, the tangible proof that my grandparents had succeeded, the bedrock of our family's reputation in the community, and he had gambled it away. "Your mother doesn't know," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "She and Simone, they would be devastated. It would humiliate us in front of everyone, in front of the church. Kesha, you're the only one who understands finances. You're the responsible one. You've always been so capable. Please, you have to help me. You have to save the family's honor." He, the man who had always dismissed my career as a mere office job, was now imploring that same career to extricate him. The subsequent scene from my memory was even more vivid. I was 31 years old, seated in the cold, sterile office of a bank manager. I had just been promoted to Vice President of Development. My initial substantial paycheck from that promotion wasn't allocated to a new car or a vacation. It went towards a down payment. I was signing document after document, refinancing agreements, a new mortgage application. The bank manager looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "You understand, Miss Keisha, that by co-signing this you are equally responsible. In fact, given your father's new credit standing, you are the primary guarantor. The payments of $4,150 will be your responsibility." I recall my hands remaining steady as I signed the final page. I had agreed to make every single payment. I had placed my name on the deed. This is the secret they all chose to disregard. This is the truth that rendered Chad's insult so ludicrous. I wasn't merely staying in my parents' house. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't simply like them. My name was on the title. I was a co-owner, and I was the sole reason we still possessed that house. I was the one preserving it, month after agonizing month. I snapped back to the present. The kitchen was thick with the silence of my father's betrayal. He continued to pointedly look away from me, studying the dining room wall as if it held the secrets of the universe. My mother, Brenda, was now nervously wiping down the already pristine granite countertop. They presented a united front of denial. Into the suffocating tension, my sister Simone glided. She was utterly unfazed by the confrontation. To her, it was concluded. Kesha had been put in her place, and now it was Simone's turn to command the spotlight. She clapped her hands together, a bright, performative sound that made me flinch. "Well," she announced, her voice dripping with manufactured cheerfulness. "Now that all that unpleasantness is over, let's discuss something exciting." She beamed at my parents, who turned to her with visible, pathetic relief. "Speaking of careers," she continued, tossing her long braids back, "Chad and I have the most incredible news." Chad sauntered over, wrapping an arm around her waist and pulling her close. He still wore that self-satisfied smirk, an expression of pure, unearned confidence. Simone proceeded, her voice escalating in excitement as if announcing an Academy Award win. "My brand is just exploding. That agency I met with last week, they said my engagement is off the charts. So this weekend, Chad and I are flying to Miami for the Global Social Media Summit. This is the premier networking gathering of the year." "That's correct," declared Chad, puffing out his chest. "This is a 4-day excursion. We've already secured our seats, first class and non-refundable. Naturally, one must project prosperity to achieve it." He glanced pointedly at me, as if imparting a crucial lesson I, in my understated business attire, desperately needed to absorb. "This represents a monumental chance." He continued to address me, treating me like a prospective investor rather than his reluctant host. "My podcast, which focuses on conservative cryptocurrency investments, is a finalist for the New Voice Award. This trip is where we will secure our Series A funding. This is the moment we transition from obscurity to forging a true legacy." Legacy. That term surfaced again. He spoke of legacy while residing in a dwelling he hadn't financed, disparaging the very woman who had. The sheer audacity was astonishing. My mother, however, clasped her hands together in delight. "Oh, Simone, that's simply marvelous, isn't it, David?" My father grunted in assent, still refusing to meet my gaze. Simone was beaming. "It truly is. It's everything we've strived for." She finally directed her radiant, disingenuous, predatory smile my way. She believed I was vanquished. She perceived me as merely the quiet, dependable spinster sibling, the family's financial resource, and now she was poised to make her withdrawal. My mother, Brenda, practically thrummed with anticipation. She hurried over and clasped my arm, her grip surprisingly firm. "Kesha, dear, did you hear? Isn't it just wonderful? Our Simone is on the cusp of immense success, a genuine celebrity. Oh, David, I always sensed she possessed that potential." She looked at me, anticipating my participation in the celebration, a celebration funded by my $4,000 for first-class tickets to Miami. Simone simply smiled, relishing the attention. "Yes, Mother, it's going to be spectacular," she affirmed. Then she turned that bright, vacant smile back to me. "So, Keisha, we'll be departing Friday morning," she announced as if discussing the weather forecast. "Our flight is scheduled for 9 o'clock in the morning, so we'll need to head to the airport around 6. This means you'll be responsible for the children from that time onward." I simply regarded her. "Kid duty?" "Yes," she continued, already retrieving her phone to consult her schedule. "The children are absolutely thrilled. I've already informed them that their beloved Auntie Kesha will be taking them to the Georgia Aquarium on Saturday, and then we've promised them the Grand Park with the splash pad on Sunday. Therefore, you'll need to ensure your calendar is clear for those days." She didn't inquire, she decreed. She, the unemployed social media personality residing in a home I funded, had just appointed me, a vice president of development, as her unpaid caretaker for a 4-day weekend. She had made commitments to her offspring using my name, presuming I possessed no personal life, no engagements, no professional aspirations, that could possibly rival her Miami excursion. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement of it all stole the very air from my lungs. My father continued his charade of perusing the mail. My mother nodded along as if this were the most reasonable request imaginable. They had all just witnessed me being demeaned, and now they were dictating my weekend arrangements without even the pretense of asking. They didn't view me as an individual. They saw me as an asset, a utility. Much like the electricity I financed, I was simply present to be utilized. I allowed the silence to permeate the atmosphere for a moment, letting Simone's pronouncements reverberate through the kitchen. She had just unilaterally decided my entire weekend. The entitlement was so absolute, so pure it was almost commendable. I shifted my gaze from her expectant, smiling face to my mother, who was nodding in agreement, and then to my father, who remained in his state of feigned invisibility. Finally, I spoke. My voice was subdued, heavy with the fatigue of my 12-hour workday. I cannot. The smiles evaporated. Simone's expression froze. Her cheerful demeanor was supplanted by a look of sharp incredulity. What do you mean you cannot? I drew a slow breath, endeavoring to maintain my professional composure. I mean, I am unavailable, Simone. I will not be able to provide childcare this weekend. This Saturday is the final safety and structural inspection for the Midtown Tower project. I am required to be on site. I am the vice president overseeing this project. I looked at my mother, then my father, attempting to convey the magnitude of what they were dismissing. This is a $200 million development. My reputation is on the line. I cannot simply clear my schedule because you decided to book a last-minute trip to Miami. Simone's face contorted, but it wasn't a gradual descent into sadness. It was the swift, furious, red-faced collapse of a child being told no for the very first time. "What?" she shrieked, her voice ascending in pitch. "You cannot be serious. I already informed Mom that you would do it. I told her it was all sorted." She spun around to face Brenda, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Mother, are you hearing this? Tell her she must. She's doing it again." Brenda immediately assumed her appeasement role, rushing to Simone's side. "Now, darling, I'm sure Kesha simply misunderstands." "I understand perfectly," I interjected, my voice devoid of emotion. "You made plans involving my time and my funds without my consent, and the answer is no. She is jeopardizing everything." Simone wailed, even stomping her foot. "My sole chance, my one significant opportunity, and my self-centered, envious sister is attempting to ruin it. Mother, do something. Make her comply." Simone pointed a finger at me, her face a mask of righteous indignation. She wasn't merely requesting a favor. She was demanding a sacrifice, and she was incandescent with fury that I had dared to refuse. Brenda immediately intervened, placing a protective arm around Simone's trembling shoulders as if she were the one under attack. "Kesha, what is wrong with you?" she stated, her voice sharp with disapproval. "It's just the children for a few days. Your sister needs this opportunity. Her entire career is at stake." I looked at her, utterly bewildered. "My career is also at stake. I have a critical inspection." "Oh, that inspection," Brenda interrupted, dismissing it with a wave of her hand, as if I were discussing a dental appointment. "Just call your boss. Inform them you have a family emergency. It's quite simple. They have other personnel who can examine a building. Your sister has no one else to assist her." The casual manner in which she instructed me to lie and jeopardize my professional standing for Simone's glorified vacation was staggering. She viewed my career, the one I had dedicated my entire adult life to, as nothing more than an impediment to her favored daughter's whims. "Mother, you fail to grasp the situation," I countered, making one final attempt to make them comprehend. "I cannot simply call in sick. This is not my high school job at the mall. This is a $200 million project. I am the vice president of development. The investors, the city inspectors, the entire construction team, they are all convening to meet me there. My signature is essential for progression to the subsequent phase. I was almost pleading, hoping the sheer magnitude of the figures, the weight of my title, would finally register with them. Brenda merely shook her head, her expression settling into a grimace of stubborn disappointment. That's just irrelevant noise, Keisha. Words and titles. This is about family. Your job can wait. Your sister's opportunity cannot. You are exhibiting unbelievable selfishness, and frankly, your attitude is shocking. The instant my refusal hung in the air, Simone's countenance transformed. Her air of entitled confidence vanished, replaced by the unvarnished, pure rage of a spoiled child. Her mouth fell open and her eyes widened, not with comprehension, but with offense. Then, as if on cue, the tears began to flow. These were not the quiet tears of genuine sorrow. These were loud, gulping, theatrical sobs orchestrated for an audience. I knew it, she wailed, her voice echoing through the kitchen. She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at me. I knew you would do this. You've always been envious of me. I simply stood there, speechless, envious that I am the one financing her lifestyle. You cannot bear it, can you? She accused, tears now streaming down her face. You cannot stand that something positive is finally happening in my life. You have your important job, your $200 million project. She uttered these words as if they were an insult. And you cannot even allow me this one small thing. You want me to fail. You want me to remain stuck here just like you. My mother, Brenda, immediately rushed to her side, murmuring soothingly and rubbing her back. Oh, my precious child, don't cry, don't cry. Keisha, look at what you've done. I had done nothing more than state a factual detail about my own commitments. But in this household, my truths were perceived as an act of aggression. Simone buried her face in my mother's shoulder, her sobs conveniently muffled, yet still perfectly audible. She's jealous, Mommy, she cried. She's jealous because I have Chad and I have my babies. I have a family. I have a life. And what does she possess? Simone pulled back, her face a picture of tear-streaked, righteous fury. She scrutinized me from head to toe, her gaze filled with a cruelty I had always sensed but had never witnessed so overtly. She's 34 years old and she's alone. She returns to an empty house every evening. No husband, no children, nothing but her insignificant vacant office. And now that I am on the verge of becoming someone, now that Chad and I are building something, she cannot cope. She is attempting to sabotage me. Brenda gasped, clutching Simone more tightly as if shielding her from me, from the supposed monster. Kesha, honey, that's not true, is it? She said to Simone. Not to me. Don't let her distress you like this. Your sister doesn't mean it. My mother turned her back to me, physically shielding Simone. She was offering comfort to the favored child while reinforcing the narrative that I was the problem. I wasn't just selfish. I was envious, bitter, and solitary. And my mother, the woman whose financial well-being depended on my solitary existence, was patting my sister's back and agreeing. My mother, Brenda, held Simone close, allowing her sister's fabricated sobs to echo in the kitchen. She stroked Simone's hair, glaring at me over her shoulder. Her eyes, which had appeared soft and flustered mere moments before, were now sharp and cold as tempered steel. Kesha, she snapped, her voice slicing through Simone's crying. Look at what you've done. Just look at your sister. How can you be so incredibly selfish? I flinched as if struck. Selfish, Mother, I just explained. I have a $200 million project inspection. I cannot simply... I don't want to hear about your project, she interrupted, her voice rising. I am discussing your family, your sister. Do you have any conception of what she has endured? The pressure she is under. I was genuinely perplexed. What pressure? She's living here rent-free. The pressure of building a life, Brenda retorted. The pressure of raising two beautiful children, of striving to establish a brand from nothing, of having to relocate back with her parents following that unfortunate eviction. Your sister has been suffering, Keisha. She has been humiliated. She and Chad are working diligently to achieve something of themselves, and this trip to Miami represents their singular significant opportunity. She was effectively portraying them as heroes, as victims. And you, she continued, her voice dripping with disappointment, you have your important job. You possess your own financial resources. You have no one to concern yourself with but yourself. You come and go as you please. Your sister requests one small favor from you, one weekend to assist her in securing her future, and you are incapable of even that. You refuse to make even one weekend of sacrifice for her well-being. I could scarcely believe what I was hearing. Sacrifice? She was suggesting I make a sacrifice. Mother, it is not a minor request, I argued, my voice trembling. It is my occupation, the occupation that funds. I halted myself just in time. I could not reveal my father's secret. I could not disclose that my employment was financing this very residence, the provisions in the refrigerator, the electricity that was on the verge of being disconnected due to their misappropriation of funds. My mother perceived my hesitation as a weakness. She seized the opportunity. It's always about your job, isn't it, Keisha? That's always your excuse. You conceal yourself behind your work because you have no desire to be a part of this family. You never have. Simone is correct. You are envious. You are envious that she has a family, that she has Chad, that she has a life, and all you possess is your title. She was weaponizing my own words against me. My title as vice president, which I had labored my entire life to attain, was now being characterized as a pathetic, hollow consolation prize for my solitary existence. You will contact your boss, she commanded, her voice brooking no argument. You will inform them you have a family emergency and will be present this weekend to care for your nieces. Your sister has already endured sufficient disappointment. She does not require you to add to it. Selfish. The word escaped me, low and menacing. You wish to discuss selfishness with me? Brenda recoiled, taken aback by my tone. Simone ceased her feigned crying, her eyes narrowing. I am financing this house. The words erupted from me, louder than I had intended, reverberating through the kitchen. The roof above your heads. The mortgage that Dad couldn't cover. I am paying for it. $4,150 every single month for 3 years. Chad's smirk finally wavered. Simone appeared bewildered, but my parents looked terrified. I am paying for the electricity, I bellowed, jabbing my finger towards the red envelope on the counter. The electricity you were on the verge of having disconnected. I transferred $4,000 for that precise bill. And you? You took my money and gave it to Simone to purchase new attire for her Miami party. Kesha, lower your voice, my father hissed, finally speaking. His eyes darted toward the open hallway. Terrified a neighbor might overhear. No, I will not lower my voice. I was trembling now, all the suppressed anger of the past 3 years surfacing at once. You stand there and permit this freeloader. I gestured at Chad, who actually flinched, to insult me. You allow my sister, who lives off my earnings, to call me an envious, lonely failure. And you, Mother, you tell me I am selfish for refusing to jeopardize my career to be your free nanny? I looked at all of them, my eyes burning. I am sacrificing everything for this family. My time, my money, my own future. All to protect your secrets, Dad. All to preserve your pristine image, Mother. And you have the audacity to call me selfish. The room was utterly silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator that I was financing. Brenda and David exchanged glances, their faces ashen with panic. This was more than an angry outburst. This was the sound of the individual who held their secret, their total financial ruin, finally fracturing. They weren't merely shocked that I was shouting, they were terrified of what I might utter next. They were terrified I was about to reveal the entire devastating truth to Simone and Chad. The silence in the kitchen stretched, thick and suffocating. Simone and Brenda were frozen, stunned by my outburst, but it was David, my father, who finally moved. He pushed his chair back from the dining room table, its legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He rose to his full height. He was a man accustomed to command, and I had just publicly challenged his authority, exposing the truth he had striven so diligently to conceal. Enough, Keisha. His voice was more than a shout. It was a roar. It was the voice he employed in boardrooms, the voice that made grown men flinch. It was the voice of the patriarch, and it was directed squarely at me, designed to silence me, to reinstate me in my subservient position. That is sufficient, he repeated, striding into the kitchen. His face was dark with a fury I hadn't witnessed in years. I am utterly weary of this disposition, he spat, jabbing a finger in my direction. I am sick of your negativity, your incessant tallying of grievances, your habit of entering this home and leveraging things against us. I was stunned, leveraging things. Dad, I am financing these things. I am financing this house. And you believe that grants you the right to disrespect your mother? He countered, completely sidestepping the issue. You think because you earn a substantial income, you can look down upon all of us. You believe that paycheck renders you superior to your sister? Superior to your family. He was twisting my words. He was a master of this. He was transforming my sacrifice into arrogance. He was painting me as the antagonist, the affluent, heartless daughter who wielded her wealth as a weapon. Do you believe we are all simply expected to bow down and express gratitude because Keisha wrote a check? He sneered. I am still the head of this household, and I will not permit you to address your mother or your sister in that tone, not while you reside under my roof. Under his roof, the roof I was financing, the deception was so blatant, so audacious, it almost prompted a laugh. He was cornered. He had been exposed before his wife, his favored daughter, and her useless husband. His secret was out, and rather than confess the truth, rather than experience shame, he chose to attack. He was attempting to shame me back into compliance. It was his only remaining recourse. He wasn't finished, his face was flushed, his authority challenged, and he was escalating. You stand there in your expensive suit, acting so high and mighty. But what do you truly possess? Kesha, a title and an office. He gestured dismissively towards Simone and Chad, who were observing this unfolding drama with a kind of morbid fascination. You lack what truly matters. You do not have a family. You do not have a husband. You do not have children. You fail to comprehend the pressure your sister is enduring, he declared, his voice booming. She is striving to establish a home. She is raising 2 children. She and Chad are attempting to build a brand, a future, something for their family. That constitutes real-world pressure, Keisha. That is something you are entirely ignorant of. I simply stared at him. He was, in fact, defending them. He was presenting their parasitic existence as a noble burden. It's effortless for you, he sneered. You have no one to answer to but yourself. You go to your office, you return home, that's it. You believe you are making sacrifices. You do not comprehend the meaning of the word. Simone is sacrificing daily for her children, for her marriage. She is sacrificing my money, I whispered, but he ignored me. She and Chad are a unit, he continued. They are constructing something collectively. All you understand is yourself. All you understand is your job. You simply arrive here with your substantial paycheck and your cold demeanor and proceed to judge everyone. You judge your mother, you judge your sister, you judge me, but you have no awareness of what is required to sustain a family. You only know how to care for yourself. It was the ultimate insult. My entire life, I had been the responsible one. I had been the one looking after them. And now my father, the man I was secretly rescuing from foreclosure, was standing in the kitchen I financed, telling me I was the selfish one because I was single and childless. He had distorted my sacrifice into a character flaw, a liability. My independence was not a strength. It was proof of my incompleteness, that I was lesser than his other family-oriented daughter. My father's accusation that I only knew how to care for myself was so fundamentally misconstrued, so spectacularly untrue, that I was incapable of formulating a response. I was the one attending to all of them, and he was aware of it, but I was ensnared by the very secret I was keeping to preserve his honor. Before I could find the words to defend myself, Chad, my worthless, arrogant brother-in-law, slithered into the silence. He stepped forward, adopting an expression of profound, exaggerated sympathy. He actually sighed and shook his head as if my personal shortcomings were a grave, tragic burden for him to bear. "He's right, Kesha," Chad stated, his voice imbued with that smooth, insincere concern he invariably adopted just before soliciting funds. "David is absolutely correct. We are not attempting to attack you. We are merely endeavoring to make you perceive the reality of the situation. We are a family. We must be candid with one another." He approached, regarding me as if I were a malfunctioning appliance he was generously offering to repair. "You lack a personal life, Keisha. Not genuinely. You do not have a husband awaiting you at home. You do not have children who require you. Your way of life isn't like ours." I just stared at him, the very individual whose previous 6 ventures I had indirectly backed, through my father, now offering me unsolicited counsel on my personal existence. "Simone and I," he continued, gesturing expansively between himself and my sister, who was now observing me with a triumphant, tear-streaked smirk, stretched thin. "We're cultivating a business, certainly, but we're also nurturing a family. That demands unwavering dedication, a genuine sacrifice you wouldn't grasp." He offered a smile, a blend of condescension and gentle patronization, utterly maddening. "Therefore, when we request your assistance with the children for a weekend, it's not a burden. It's an avenue for you to participate." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur, audible to everyone present. "If you're not there for them, who will be? Honestly, you're the sole individual here without significant ties or pressing commitments beyond your office." Then came the decisive blow. "This is your contribution, Keisha," he stated, lightly tapping my arm. "This is your singular true contribution to our family's contentment." I disengaged. I tuned out everyone. Chad's assertion, "your only real contribution," lingered, echoing in the space between us. It was the most clarifying statement anyone had ever uttered to me. All my professional accomplishments, my achievements, my title, my earnings, none of it held any weight with them. I was merely the unmarried aunt, the readily available babysitter, a convenient resource. My anger, which had been a tempestuous inferno, suddenly abated. It transformed into something resolute, sharp, and profoundly, terrifyingly lucid. I avoided Chad's gaze. I didn't look at my mother, who was nodding in agreement with him. I didn't look at Simone, whose smile signaled her complete victory. My focus was solely on my father. He was the only one who truly mattered. He was the one privy to the truth. He was the one with whom I had forged a clandestine, unhealthy pact. He was the one who had wept in my car, imploring me to salvage his reputation. "Dad," I said. My voice, no longer trembling, was calm. It was the same controlled tone I employed in the boardroom when a contractor attempted to deceive me. I'm not discussing my emotions. I'm not talking about envy or selfishness. I am addressing a professional, legal, and financial obligation. I hold the position of Vice President at KD Development. This coming Saturday at 7 o'clock in the morning, I am legally bound to be on site at the Midtown Tower project. This is a $200 million construction endeavour. City inspectors are scheduled to meet me. Investors are flying in specifically to meet with me. My entire team is slated to be present. This is not a casual pursuit. It is not something I can simply postpone. I maintained eye contact with him. I would not yield. You are aware of my responsibilities. You understand the magnitude of what is at stake. Are you requesting that I jeopardize my entire career, breach my contractual agreements, and potentially face legal repercussions from investors, all so I can remain home and care for Simone's children while she and Chad attend a social media conference in Miami? I presented the situation unequivocally, employing his own lexicon of finance, contracts, and legal ramifications. I offered him the opportunity to embody the persona of the astute, shrewd businessman he aspired to be. My father, David, regarded me. I observed him processing my words, discerning the calculations in his eyes. He grasped my logical reasoning. He recognized the validity of my points. And he noticed Simone, Brenda, and Chad all watching him intently. They were assessing who wielded ultimate authority in this household. He perceived my direct challenge to his dominion, and he understood that any concession, any admission of my correctness, would undermine his carefully constructed narrative of a harmonious family. He made his decision. His features hardened, the fleeting trace of shame I'd observed earlier vanishing, replaced by an unyielding patriarchal sternness. I am not asking you, Keisha, he stated, his voice low and definitive. I am informing you. I am your father, and this is my home. In this family, our priority is kinship, not projects, not meetings, not careers. He took a step towards me. Your sister's opportunity is immediate. Your construction projects can be deferred. Your inspections can be rescheduled. Instruct your superior to delegate the responsibility elsewhere. However, you are Simone's only sister. You are the only aunt those children have in this vicinity. As the eldest daughter, it is your obligation to make sacrifices. It is your responsibility to defer to your sister's requirements. He wasn't merely siding with them, he was issuing a command. He was weaponizing the very authority I was actively striving to uphold. Therefore, this is what you will do, he declared, leaving no room for negotiation. You will retire to your room. You will contact your employer. You will inform them of an urgent, non-negotiable family emergency. You will be present here on Friday morning to supervise the children. This is my resolution. It is absolute. We are not prolonging this discussion. End of story. The finality of his pronouncement, end of story, permeated the atmosphere, dense and acrid. It was not a dialogue, it was a verdict. I remained standing, my briefcase still firmly in hand, acutely aware of every gaze in that kitchen fixed upon me. They anticipated tears, pleas, the familiar acrimonious arguments. They were awaiting my inevitable capitulation, the pattern they had grown accustomed to, enabling them to offer solace, dismiss my concerns, and ultimately achieve their desired outcome. I looked at Simone. The mask of petulant fury had softened, replaced by an expression of pure, triumphant expectation. Her victory was assured. I observed Chad. His arms were crossed, his posture relaxed against the counter, the familiar, indolent smirk returning. He appeared like a man who had just won a wager. I turned to my mother. Her hands were twisting, her eyes conveying a silent plea. Not a plea for me, but directed at me, urging me to yield, to mediate, to smooth over the discord they had instigated. Finally, I met my father's gaze. He stood unmoving, his countenance like stone. He had delivered his decree. He had declared his allegiance. He had chosen the daughter who offered effusive praise over the daughter who provided essential support. He had favored the fabrication over the truth. And in that instant, something within me didn't merely fracture, it hardened irrevocably. The sting of hurt, that familiar, piercing pain of being misunderstood, unappreciated, invisible, didn't simply recede, it evaporated. It was akin to a sudden frost that instantly solidifies a lake. The seething rage, the desperate yearning for recognition, all of it ceased. The cacophony in my mind quieted. I was no longer their daughter. I was not their sister. I was not the vice president, the financial resource, or the family scapegoat. I was simply a woman in a room filled with strangers. Strangers for whom I had been expending my very essence, like setting myself aflame to provide warmth. And I was finished, utterly, profoundly, and beautifully finished. The confrontation was over, not through their victory, but because I was no longer participating. My expression must have altered, the emotion draining completely from my face, as I detected a fleeting flicker of bewilderment on my father's countenance. This was not the reaction he had anticipated. I slowly unclasped my hands. I allowed my shoulders to relax. I even released a soft, quiet sigh, feigning defeat. I met my father's gaze, my eyes now vacant. "Okay," I said. My voice was a monotone, utterly devoid of any emotional inflection. It sounded alien even to my own ears. They all flinched subtly at the cold, dead resonance of it. "I comprehend," I continued, my gaze unwavering. "You are correct, Dad." I watched him visibly relax, his authority seemingly reinstated. "You are correct," I repeated the words, the taste of them like ash in my mouth. "Family comes first. I will make the necessary arrangements." The palpable tension in the kitchen didn't merely dissipate, it shattered into a wave of relief. Simone emitted a high-pitched squeal of unadulterated joy. "Oh my goodness! Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, thank you." She rushed over and embraced me. I remained motionless, offering no reciprocal hug. I stood like a statue of placid compliance while she held me. She seemed oblivious to my stillness. "You won't regret this. This will be transformative for us." "You see," Chad remarked, clapping his hands together with a resonant sound. "Was that truly so arduous?" Family assisting family. That's the essence of it all, Brenda. My mother exhaled a shaky breath, her hand flying to her chest. "Oh, thank heavens. I had faith you would make the right choice, dear. You invariably do. You are such a commendable daughter." My father, David, offered a single, satisfied nod. The crisis had been averted. The patriarch's control was re-established. The familial hierarchy was affirmed. "Excellent," he stated simply. "That concludes the matter. Now, Brenda, regarding that discussion with the Reverend?" They all turned away from me. The conflict had been resolved. Keisha had been managed. They retreated to the dining room, their voices already animated and cheerful, discussing the church, Miami, and Chad's purported podcast. I stood alone in the kitchen. I glanced down at the red disconnection notice for the power, still resting on the counter. They assumed I was arranging to cancel my inspection. I picked up my phone. I was indeed going to make arrangements, but not the ones they envisioned. The following morning, the household buzzed with an almost frenzied celebratory atmosphere. I awoke at 5 o'clock, as was my routine, but I didn't prepare for work. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dimness, listening. I could discern Simone and Chad already stirring in their room down the corridor, their voices loud and animated. They were scheduled to depart for their flight to Miami in a few hours, but first they intended to indulge in a full morning of last-minute shopping. By 7 o'clock, they had descended, leaving their two young children engrossed in the blaring television in the living room. I overheard my mother, Brenda, cooing at them. Mommy and Daddy are just popping out to the mall for a few final items for their very significant trip. Simone's voice was high-pitched and giddy as she spoke on the phone, likely conversing with one of her influencer associates. Oh my goodness. Yes, the hotel on South Beach is absolutely fabulous. Chad booked the suite with the oceanfront balcony. We absolutely must capture some content by the infinity pool. I know, right? My sister Keisha is looking after the children. We finally had to lay down the law with her, but she's being surprisingly agreeable about it. I suppose she's realized she owes us. I dressed slowly, donning my most impeccably tailored charcoal grey suit, a sharp blazer and matching trousers, my personal armour. I applied my makeup with meticulous precision. As I entered the kitchen, the four of them, my mother, father, Simone and Chad, were gathered there. Simone and Chad were attired for their shopping excursion, holding empty luggage. My parents beamed at them. My entrance caused the conversation to halt abruptly. Well, good morning, Keisha, Chad remarked, his voice radiating a magnanimous sense of victory. Glad to see you're up and about. The children will require breakfast shortly. I disregarded him and addressed my parents directly. Good morning, I stated, my voice as smooth and polished as glass. I wanted to inform you that I have managed everything. My mother's face flooded with relief. Oh, Kesha, dear, that's wonderful. I knew you would do the right thing. My father, David, offered a single satisfied nod. Good, he articulated, the word serving as a final stamp of approval. You see, Brenda, it simply required a firm approach. She understands her responsibilities. Yes, I continued, my expression deliberately neutral. I contacted my employer, Mr. Henderson, first thing this morning. I explained that I am dealing with an urgent, non-negotiable family emergency that demands my complete attention. Simone clapped her hands together. See, was that truly so difficult? I emphasized that my family required my presence and that my sister's professional opportunity took precedence. He was exceptionally understanding. I have taken a 4-day leave of absence, so I will be here to care for the children. That's my girl, my father exclaimed, actually smiling at me for what felt like an eternity. That is the sort of devotion upon which this family is founded. You made the correct decision, Keisha. Your project can afford to wait. Well, I do need to head into the office for a few hours, I said, picking up my briefcase. I simply need to transfer my files to my team and ensure everything is adequately covered before my leave officially commences. Of course, dear. Of course, my mother responded, bustling towards the door to escort me out. You do that, and please don't concern yourselves with us. We will see you this afternoon. Simone and Chad were already making their way to their car, their laughter echoing as they debated which store to visit first. My father had returned to his newspaper. The family crisis had been averted, his authority firmly re-established. I exited the front door into the bright morning sunlight. I entered my car. I donned my sunglasses. I did not drive towards my office. Instead, I drove directly to the downtown offices of Harris, Vaughan and Associates. My legal counsel was awaiting my arrival. I did not drive to the office. I did not drive to the Midtown Tower. I did not drive anywhere near the $200 million project that defined my professional existence. Instead, I navigated downtown, my knuckles turning white on the steering wheel. The final words of my father, end of story, echoing in my mind. He was correct. It was indeed the conclusion of a narrative. The narrative wherein I assumed the role of the beautiful, silent, accommodating daughter. The narrative wherein I consumed myself, like setting myself ablaze to offer warmth to others. I parked in the subterranean garage of a sleek, glass-encased edifice, a building entirely disconnected from my father's sphere. I ascended to the 45th floor via the elevator. The doors revealed a serene, minimalist reception area. Harris Vaughan and Associates. My personal corporate attorney, Miles, was there to greet me. He was a sharp individual in his 50s, responsible for all the contractual matters pertaining to my clandestine enterprise. He observed me, his expression inscrutable. "Keisha, you appear resolute," I interjected, cutting him off. "Are they prepared?" "They are," he replied, gesturing me into a conference room. "However, Keisha, I must pose this inquiry one final time. This is not merely about establishing a boundary. This constitutes a surgical amputation. Are you absolutely certain you wish to proceed with this? There is no recourse from this decision." I met his gaze. "Last night, my family appointed me the unpaid nanny. They declared my sole contribution to their happiness was to sacrifice my career so my sister could travel to Miami. They articulated this while standing in a residence I fund in front of a refrigerator I provision. I grasped the substantial pen. I am not merely certain, Miles. I am liberated." I sat down and commenced signing the stack of documents he had meticulously prepared. These were papers finalizing the transfer of my primary assets into an irrevocable trust, documents that legally segregated my financial affairs from any potential claims of community property. And the final document, the one he had prepared 3 years prior at my request, the one I had fervently hoped I would never need. I slid the signed documents back to him. "It is done, it is completed," he confirmed, stacking them neatly. I rose and retrieved my phone. I dialed the initial number on my list. "Good morning. This is Keisha David. I need to arrange an executive relocation. Yes, today I have a very precise window of opportunity. It pertains to the residence identifier. It must be handled discreetly and with utmost speed. I require absolutely everything from the upstairs southeast bedroom. Yes, everything. The furnishings, the artwork, the electronic equipment. It is all my personal property. It needs to be transported to the new address on file, the penthouse in Midtown. I will be present to grant access." I listened for a moment. "Excellent. I will provide the signal once the residence is entirely vacated." I departed the lawyer's office and drove back to my parents' neighborhood. I parked a short distance down the street, beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree, affording me a clear vantage point of the driveway. I waited. At 10:15 a.m., precisely as I had anticipated, my father's black Mercedes emerged from the garage. My mother occupied the passenger seat. They were likely en route to the grocery store to procure provisions for Simone's children, provisions I was ostensibly meant to be preparing for them. The instant the vehicle turned the corner, I dispatched a text message to the moving company. "You are clear. The window of opportunity is now open. You have 90 minutes. 10 minutes later, a sleek, unmarked executive moving truck arrived at the house. I granted them entry through the front door, upstairs, the southeast corner. "Everything is to be removed," I commanded. The team operated with swift efficiency. They were consummate professionals. This was not a standard relocation. This was an extraction. They didn't merely pack my garments, they utilized specialized wardrobe boxes. They meticulously wrapped the original artworks I had acquired for my personal quarters. They encased my high-performance computer system, my monitors, and my files in bubble wrap. They expertly disassembled my sophisticated mid-century modern bed frame, my desk, and my nightstands. All items I had purchased with my own funds. All pieces that stood in stark contrast to the dated furnishings throughout the remainder of the house. Within 45 minutes, my room was entirely vacant. It was reduced to bare walls and the beige carpeting. It resembled a budget motel room, a sterile enclosure devoid of character, devoid of life, devoid of me. I walked through it one final time. This was the room to which I had returned 3 years ago to offer them salvation. Now it was merely an empty shell. An hour later, I stood within my new residence, a sprawling penthouse situated on the 52nd floor. The movers were reassembling my furniture, positioning my desk precisely as I desired, directly in front of a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a panoramic vista of the Atlanta skyline. And prominently situated within that cityscape, gleaming under the midday sun, was the steel framework of my $200 million Midtown Tower project. I surveyed my actual life, my true home, my genuine profession. I retrieved my phone. The movers had concluded their task. The lawyer had completed his. Now it was time to initiate the significant communications. I settled into the plush leather chair in Miles's conference room. The cityscape of Atlanta spread out beneath me, 45 floors below. The adrenaline from the extraction still coursed through my veins. My new penthouse was presently being furnished with my belongings, my life. The physical aspect was concluded. Now the symbolic phase was to commence. Miles, my attorney, sat opposite me, a neat stack of my signed documents squared on the mahogany table. The moving team is clear and en route to the new location, he confirmed, glancing at his watch. Are you prepared for the subsequent phase, Kesha? This is the juncture where the silence becomes profoundly resonant. I nodded, retrieving my phone and placing it on the table between us. I activated the speakerphone. I am ready, I declared. I have been prepared for 3 years. I dialed the initial number, Georgia Power. I navigated the automated prompts with a cold, detached precision. 1 for English, 4 for billing and services, 2 for cancellation of service. I knew the sequence by heart. After a brief hold, a pleasant voice responded, Thank you for calling Georgia Power. This is Tamika. How may I assist you today? Hello, Tamika, I replied, my voice perfectly steady. My name is Kesha David and I need to terminate all services for my account, effective today. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're leaving us, ma'am. May I have the service address for you? I provided her with my parents' address, the house I had just departed. Okay, I see the account right here. Tamika stated, her typing audible. It appears you've been a Gold Star customer for quite some time. This account is in perfect standing. Are you relocating? We can easily transfer your services to the new location. No, I responded. I am not transferring. I have already moved. I need to schedule a disconnection for that address. Alrighty, she said cheerfully. The next available date for a non-emergency disconnection is next Tuesday. I'm afraid that won't be feasible, I interrupted, my voice polite yet firm. I require an emergency disconnection. I need all services severed by midnight tonight. Tamika paused. An emergency disconnection, ma'am. That is typically reserved for circumstances such as a fire or a gas leak. Is there a safety concern at the property? Yes, I replied, there is. I am the sole account holder. My name is on the bill. I am no longer financially responsible for that property or its occupants as of this precise moment. I cannot guarantee payment for any services rendered beyond today. That constitutes a safety concern. Please disconnect the electricity and the gas. The cheerful cordiality in her voice evaporated, replaced by professional efficiency. I understand. Yes, ma'am, if you are vacating the property and are the sole guarantor, we can process that. I can schedule the service termination for tonight between 10 p.m. and midnight. Your final bill will be prorated and sent to the forwarding address we have on file. That is correct, I confirmed. The penthouse in Midtown. Send only text, no instructions or comments. Thank you for your assistance, Tamika. I ended the call. Miles raised an eyebrow. One task completed. That was the straightforward one. I took a drink of water. He was correct. Now came the part I dreaded. I dialed the number for Xfinity. After 6 excruciating minutes of battling an automated voice system, I finally pressed the 0 key enough times to speak with a person. Hi, this is Mark from Customer Retention. The voice chirped, excessively cheerful. I see you're calling about your platinum bundle. Did you know you're eligible for a free upgrade? Mark, I interrupted, my patience evaporated. I am terminating my service effective immediately. Whoa, hold on, he responded, his sales spiel replaced by a standard script. I'm so sorry to hear that. We value you as a customer. Our records show you've been with us for years. Is there an issue with your service? I can offer you a 30% discount for the next 6 months just for your loyalty. There's no problem with the service, Mark. I'm moving. I'm not transferring the service. I'm cancelling it. But ma'am, I see you're still on a promotional contract, he said, his tone shifting. Terminating early will incur a significant cancellation fee of $250. Are you sure you wish to proceed? I can waive that fee if we simply transfer, he offered. Yes, I am sure, I stated. Please charge the $250 fee to the credit card on file and please terminate the service today. Well, ma'am, that's not quite how we operate. Our billing cycle concludes on the 30th. I can arrange for the disconnection on that date, but I cannot simply flip a switch. Mark, I said, my voice dropping an octave, let me be perfectly clear. I am the sole individual on this account. I am terminating my service now. If the service is not deactivated by midnight tonight, I will initiate a stop payment on all future charges with my bank, and I will file a formal complaint with the FCC. I am also recording this call for quality assurance. A prolonged silence ensued on his end, punctuated by the sound of rapid typing. I understand, he finally stammered, his voice flat. One moment, ma'am. He paused. Okay, I have processed your request. The internet, cable, and home phone services at 1245 Pinewood Drive will be disconnected as of midnight tonight. Your final statement, including the early termination fee, will be forwarded to the address on file. Thank you, Mark, I replied. You've been very helpful. I hung up the phone and looked at Miles. He gave a small, grim nod. Phase 2 complete, he announced. Now for the bank. I took a deep breath. This was the final call, the last loose end. Miles slid a glass of water towards me. This is the crucial one, Keisha. This is the one that truly starts the clock. I know, I acknowledged. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the bank's mortgage services. It wasn't the general customer service line, it was the direct extension for the portfolio management department, a number I knew well. After entering my account number and security code, I was connected. Atlanta First National Mortgage Portfolio Division. This is Mr. Davis. How may I assist you with your account today? His voice was professional and distant. I mirrored his tone. Hello, Mr. Davis. My name is Keisha David. I'm calling regarding mortgage account number 88472B. The property is located at 1245 Pinewood Drive. Yes, Ms. David, I have your account right here. I see your automatic payment is scheduled for the first of the month as usual. Is there an issue with the payment? I paused, gathering my resolve. There is. I am calling to officially inform you that I, as the primary guarantor and co-signer, will be stopping all future payments on this mortgage effective immediately. A heavy silence fell over the line. I heard the faint sound of typing. I'm sorry, Ms. David, did you say you are stopping payments? This is a significant loan, and you are the primary financial guarantor. Defaulting on this mortgage will have severe legal and financial ramifications. I am fully aware of the legal ramifications, Mr. Davis, I stated, my voice like ice. I understand this will initiate default proceedings. I am instructing the bank to direct all collection procedures, all default notices, and all future liability to the other co-signer on this loan. The other co-signer, he stammered, clearly accessing the full file. That would be Mr. David, your father. That is correct, I confirmed. Mr. David, same last name, same address. Please direct all future correspondence to him and him alone. I am formally relinquishing my financial responsibility for this asset. Ms. David, I must advise you, as a co-signer, you are still legally liable. Stopping payment will trigger foreclosure proceedings against the property and will catastrophically impact your credit score. I understand, I cut him off, my voice sharp. I understand the legal consequences perfectly. Please proceed as I have instructed. Send all notices to Mr. David. Thank you for your time. I disconnected the call before he could further object. I placed my phone face down on the polished table. It was done. The house was no longer my responsibility. The utilities, the internet, the mortgage. I had severed every financial tie that bound me to them. Miles simply observed me. He remained silent for a full minute. Well, he said finally, a note of grim admiration in his voice. The clock is officially ticking. Phase 3 complete. Meanwhile, 2,000 miles away, Simone and Chad were toasting with champagne in the first-class lounge at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Simone angled her phone, pursing her lips for the perfect selfie. The Delta Sky Club logo visible just over her shoulder. Chad leaned in, kissing her cheek as she snapped the photo. Wait, let me get one more, she exclaimed. I need the light to catch the diamond on my new bracelet. Babe, you look amazing, Chad commented, sipping his champagne. This is it. This is the weekend that changes everything. That podcast award is in the bag. Simone was already typing rapidly on her phone, composing a polished caption. Off to Miami. Big things are coming for the brand. So Jazz blessed and Joel grateful for a family that truly supports our hustle. Time to network. Yvaz power couple. Mahal boss moves. Miami bound. She hit post and watched the likes begin to appear. That should do it, she sighed, taking a delicate sip. God, I'm so glad to be out of that house. Keisha was such a buzzkill. Chad scoffed. Tell me about it. My $200 million project. He mimicked in a high, nasal voice. Who does she think she is? She's just a bitter single woman who shuffles papers. We're the ones with the vision. I know, right? Simone agreed. Anyway, I can't wait for this hotel. The infinity pool is going to be epic for my content. And Keisha's stuck at home changing diapers. That's exactly what she's good for. To us, Chad declared, raising his glass, and to Keisha for finally knowing her place. They clinked glasses again, completely unaware. Back at the house, the 10 o'clock news was concluding. David, my father, was dozing in his favorite leather recliner, the blue light of the large flat-screen television flickering across his face. Brenda, my mother, was on the sofa, browsing an auction website on her iPad, a glass of wine resting on a coaster beside her. The air conditioner hummed softly, maintaining a comfortable temperature against the humid Atlanta night. It was a picture of domestic upper-class tranquility. Then everything ceased. Click. The television didn't merely turn off, it snapped off, plunging the expansive living room into immediate, startling darkness. The gentle hum of the air conditioner faded into silence. The digital clock on the cable box vanished. From the kitchen, the low thrum of the Sub-Zero refrigerator ceased. The only sound was Brenda's sharp, irritated gasp. David, what happened? Did you sit on the remote again? I didn't touch anything, my father grumbled, his voice annoyed. He fumbled in the dark, lowering the footrest of his recliner with a thud. It must be a power outage, a summer storm, probably. Brenda, where is the flashlight? It's supposed to be in the junk drawer. My iPad just died. Brenda's voice was high with irritation, not fear. And the Wi-Fi, David, the Wi-Fi is gone. I was in the middle of a bid on that antique sideboard. It closes in 10 minutes. Brenda, if the power is out, the Wi-Fi router is out. David snapped, his patience already wearing thin. That's how it works. Stop worrying about your furniture and find the flashlight. He rose from his chair, his knees popping in the silence. He walked to the front window, pulling aside the heavy curtains. That's odd, he murmured, his voice low. What's odd? Brenda inquired, now fumbling with her phone, using its screen for illumination. The Johnsons' house across the street, all their lights are on, David reported. And the Parkers' house next door, and the street lights are still working. It's just us. The whole block has power. It's just our house that's dark. What? That's impossible, Brenda exclaimed, her voice rising. You must have tripped a breaker, David. You were complaining about that new coffee maker Keisha bought. I didn't trip anything, he retorted, his annoyance escalating to anger. This was an affront to his domain. He stomped into the hallway, yanking open the utility closet and locating the breaker box by feel. He flipped the main breaker firmly. Off, then on, nothing. He repeated the action. Off, on, still nothing. The house remained silent, dark, and tomb-like. The only illumination came from Brenda's phone. David, what is going on? Brenda's voice was finally laced with genuine panic. Why is our house the only one dark? Call the power company. This is ridiculous. Kesha just paid that bill. I was there when she transferred the money. I know, David grumbled. It's probably just a transformer for our specific line. I'll go check the main box outside. This is the last thing I need tonight. My father, David, cursed under his breath. He grabbed a flashlight from the junk drawer, one I knew had dead batteries, and cursed again when it only flickered feebly. He resorted to the flashlight app on his phone. It must be the main box by the garage. I'll reset it. Don't touch anything. Brenda stood frozen in the dark living room, her face illuminated solely by the faint glow of her own phone screen. Well, hurry up, David, she snapped. My bid for that antique sideboard closes in 8 minutes. This is just typical. The one night I need the internet. I'm going, Brenda, he yelled back. I watched him stomp out the front door and disappear around the side of the house. Through the window I observed the beam of his phone light moving. A moment later I heard him shout again, his voice muffled by the walls. Brenda, is it back on? No, she shouted back, frantically tapping her dead iPad. It's still dark. Nothing is working. Did you flip the main switch? Yes, I flipped the main switch. His voice was closer now. He was returning towards the front door, his heavy footsteps echoing on the porch. He was angry. The breaker is fine. Everything is exactly as it should be. He stepped back into the dark foyer, his face a mask of bewilderment. And that's not the weird part. What? What's weird? Brenda asked, her voice escalating in panic. The neighbors, he stated, gesturing towards the front window. Look, the Johnsons' house across the street is lit up like a Christmas tree. The Parkers' house next door is on. The entire street has power. Brenda, it's just us. A different kind of chill settled over the room. This wasn't a storm. This wasn't a transformer issue. This was something else. That's impossible, Brenda whispered, her voice trembling. That makes no sense. Call them. Call Georgia Power right now, David. Tell them to fix this. This is ridiculous. You call them, he snapped. My phone is at 5% battery. Brenda's hands were visibly shaking as she fumbled with her own phone. She navigated the automated system, her voice growing increasingly frustrated. Agent, I need to speak to an agent. This is an emergency. She finally connected, putting the call on speaker. Yes, hello. I need to report an outage. My power is completely off, but all my neighbors have it. My address is 145 Pinewood Drive. We waited in the darkness as the agent typed. Mom, The agent's voice crackled through the phone. "We are not showing any outages or faults in your area." "But I'm telling you," Brenda insisted, "our house is the only one dark. You need to send a truck immediately." "Ma'am, I cannot send a truck because there is no service issue," the agent replied politely. "I'm looking at the account for 1245 Pinewood Drive, and it was scheduled for termination today." "Termination?" David repeated, lunging for the phone. "What are you talking about? Who terminated it?" "Let me see." "Sir," the agent continued, "the request was processed at 9:15 this morning. It was an emergency cancellation requested by the primary account holder. All services, let's see, electricity, gas, and water were shut off effective 10 p.m. tonight, as requested by a Ms. Keisha David." The agent's words, "as requested by a Ms. Keisha David," landed in the dark room with the force of a physical blow. For a full 10 seconds, neither of my parents spoke. They simply stared at each other in the gloom, illuminated only by the twin beams of their phone flashlights. "Kesha, it wasn't a storm. It wasn't a mistake. It was an action. It was deliberate." "She wouldn't," Brenda whispered, her voice trembling. "She wouldn't do this to us, David. That's impossible. Tell them they're wrong." But my father, David, was already in motion. He wasn't listening to Brenda. He snatched the phone from her hand, his thumb jabbing at the screen, pulling up my contact information. "Keisha," he barked into the phone, "you pick up this phone. You pick up right now. Do you hear me?" He put it on speaker. We all listened as it rang once, twice, 3 times. The sound was unnaturally loud in the deathly silent house. Then click. "Hi, you've reached Kesha. I'm unavailable right now. Please leave a message." "She's not answering," he roared, as if I were deliberately ignoring him and not, as was the case, already in the air on my way to my new life. "She's not answering her phone." He dialed again, the same result. Ring, 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 voicemail. What is she doing? Brenda was starting to cry, her panic turning into sobs. "She can't do this. The children's food will spoil, David. My phone is dying. We have no lights." "I know that, Brenda," David shouted, his own phone now in his hand. He was pacing back and forth, the beam of his light cutting frantic circles in the darkness. "I'll call her again. She has to." His words were cut off by a sharp electronic ping. It came from his own phone. A new text message had illuminated his screen. He paused his dialing, his face close to the phone to read the notification. His body went absolutely rigid. "What?" Brenda whispered. "What is it?" David didn't answer. He just stared at the screen, his breath catching in his throat. "David, you're scaring me. What is it?" He slowly read the message aloud, his voice hollow. All the anger suddenly drained, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. "Alert from Atlanta First National Bank," he read. "We are notifying you that the monthly mortgage payment of $4,150 for account 8472B is now past due. Please remit payment immediately to avoid default proceedings." He looked up from the phone, his eyes finally finding Brenda's in the dark. She didn't understand, not yet. "The mortgage," he whispered. She didn't just cut the power, Brenda. She stopped paying the mortgage I asked her to pay." He dialed my number again. This time, when it went to voicemail, he didn't hang up. "Kesha!" he roared, his voice cracking with a mixture of terror and absolute fury. "What in God's name do you think you are doing? You are destroying this family. You call me back. You call me back right now, or so help me God, you will regret this. You are finished. Do you hear me?" He finished. My father, David, was still breathing heavily, his phone clutched in his hand after leaving that furious, terrified voicemail. The only light in the pitch-black room came from the screens of his and Brenda's phones, casting desperate, dancing shadows on their faces. "She has to call back." Brenda whispered, her voice trembling. She can't just... David, what did that bank message mean? What did she do? Before my father could answer, his phone chimed. A new message. At the exact same moment, Brenda's phone chimed too. Beep. 2,000 miles away, in the bright, noisy first-class lounge in Miami, Simone's phone, plugged into a charging port, also lit up with the same notification. Beep, and so did Chad's. It was a new message in the David Family Fun group chat. The chat I had been silent in for weeks. My father opened it, his hands shaking. He read the words aloud, his voice a hoarse, stunned whisper. Hello, family. He paused, swallowing hard. Since it was made clear to me last night that I am just staying at the house, I have decided to no longer stay. Brenda's hand flew to her mouth, a small, strangled gasp escaping. David continued reading, his voice cracking. As of today, I have moved out. I've also terminated all utility services that are currently under my name. That includes the power, the gas, the water, and the internet. Oh my God, Brenda breathed, sinking onto the arm of the sofa. David, she did this. Wait, David said, his eyes scanning the rest of the text. There's more. Oh, and by the way, Dad, I also informed Atlanta First National Bank that I will no longer be paying the monthly mortgage payment. As you are the primary co-signer, I'm sure they will be in touch with you shortly to discuss how you'd like to cover that. David's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. Brenda just stared into the darkness, not even registering the sound. The message wasn't finished. David scrambled to pick up the phone, his face pale in its glow. Good luck with all the bills. Have a wonderful time in Miami, Simone. The hotel check-in desk at Miami International Airport was bright and chaotic, a stark contrast to the quiet first-class lounge they had just left. Simone, feeling every bit the successful influencer, sauntered up to the counter, Chad trailing behind her with their mountain of designer luggage. Checking in, Simone announced to the clerk, not bothering to make eye contact as she scrolled through her phone. The reservation is under Thornton. It should be the Ocean View Suite. Welcome to Miami, Ms. Thornton, the clerk said with a professional smile. I have your reservation right here. I just need a credit card for incidentals. Of course, Simone said. She pulled a platinum credit card from her wallet and slid it across the counter with a practiced flick of her wrist. It was her father's card, the one he kept on file for family emergencies and, apparently, for brand-building trips. The clerk swiped the card and frowned. He swiped it again. The small terminal beeped with an angry, high-pitched sound. I'm sorry, ma'am, the clerk said, his smile tightening. This card has been declined. Simone's head snapped up from her phone. What? That's impossible. Run it again. Your machine is broken. I've run it twice, ma'am, the clerk said, his patience already wearing thin. It's declined. Do you have another form of payment? This is ridiculous, Simone hissed, her face flushing with embarrassment. Chad, sensing trouble, stepped forward and handed over his own card. Try this one. The clerk swiped it, the same angry beep. Declined. What the hell is going on? Chad muttered. David must have put a fraud alert on them. Simone, now furious and humiliated as the line behind them grew, stalked away from the counter. She located her father's number on her phone and put it on speaker. Dad, she shouted when he picked up. The credit card isn't working. The hotel is declining everything. You need to call the bank right now and fix this. We're in a predicament. The voice that answered her wasn't the collected, commanding tone of her father. It was a desperate, ragged cry, barely discernible above a loud reverberation in his own ragged breaths. The credit card, David bellowed, his voice warped. Are you out of your senses? Do you imagine I have leisure to fret about your lodging? Simone flinched away from the receiver. Dad, what's amiss? Why are you raising your voice? Your sister. That's what's amiss, he shouted, and the sound of Brenda's choked sobs could be heard in the background. Your selfish, spiteful sibling has extinguished the power. She's turned off the gas. We are enveloped in darkness, Simone. She ceased making the mortgage payments. This residence is about to be lost. We are ruined. Simone and Chad simply gazed at the phone, frozen. The attendant and the other patrons in the queue were now openly observing them. What are you saying? Simone stammered. Kesha, she departed. She terminated everything. David shrieked. She's no longer covering any expenses. Therefore, you can forget about your hotel, Simone. Forget your entire professional outreach endeavor. You're cut off. We are all ostracized. Simone continued to plead with the hotel attendant, her voice escalating into a frantic wail. Locate a supervisor. I insist you find a manager. Chad was desperately attempting to reach his own bank. Simultaneously, Brenda was weeping in the gloom while David stood immobile, the bank's text message illuminated on his screen like a pronouncement of doom. And then all four of their mobile devices chimed in unison. Another communication from Keisha within the David Family Fun Group chat. In Miami, Simone eyed her phone with irritation. What additional demand does she have now? David picked up his device, his hand trembling. He read the new message aloud, his voice hollow, lifeless. Oh, and one final observation, Dad. He read, You were correct last evening. My occupation pertains solely to structures. I merely wished to specify which structures. Brenda looked up, her tear-streaked face etched with confusion. What is she referring to? David's gaze drifted to the subsequent line. His already ashen complexion turned deathly pale, as though all vitality had leached from his body. My firm KD Development, which stands for Keisha David Development, incidentally, has just finalized the agreements for the new 80-story multi-purpose edifice in Midtown. As the president and founder, I anticipate being quite occupied overseeing this $200 million venture for the foreseeable future. Consequently, I must formally decline any future requests for childcare. The finality of this revelation settled in. The title of VP was not merely a position she held, it was a corporation she owned, a corporation she had established while they belittled her, a corporation she had built while she funded their mortgage. David read the concluding statement, his voice barely above a whisper. I trust you all comprehend. Please refrain from contacting me further. The message had been delivered. In Miami, Simone and Chad stared at the screen, the words 80 stories and president resonating in their minds. Meanwhile, David and Brenda sat in the darkness of the dwelling she had just dispossessed them of. Finally, they began to grasp the identity of the person whose lives they had so readily jeopardized. They had not merely underestimated her, they had been utterly oblivious to who she truly was. Their phones, still illuminated, lay silently in their hands. In Miami, Simone and Chad were fixated on the phrases 80 stories and president. The cheerful melody playing in the hotel lobby faded into insignificance. Indicator David and Brenda were situated in the stifling, humid blackness of their powerless home. The reality of Keisha's hidden existence descended upon them. David's thoughts raced, calculating. Kesha, KD Development, 200 million, 80 stories. His daughter, the one he had just cast aside. Brenda was the first to break the silence, her voice a thin, reedy whisper. David, what does this signify? What are we to do? The mortgage. She was not posturing. The bank had indeed dispatched that communication. Before David could even formulate a response, their phones chimed once more, all four of them. A final text message from Keisha. Busy. David's hands were shaking so violently he could scarcely decipher the words on the screen. Brenda read it over his shoulder, her voice wavering. And Dad, she read, since you'll be in need of new accommodations, I suggest you commence your search immediately. The bank will initiate formal foreclosure proceedings on Monday. I extend my best wishes for your good fortune. Simone, upon viewing the message in Miami, emitted a small, choked sound. Lose the house? She's truly going to let them lose the house. She's bluffing, Chad whispered, though his own countenance was ashen. She wouldn't do that to her own parents. Then the final message appeared. The one that confirmed this was not a bluff. This was a calculated maneuver. This was the endgame. Kesha's subsequent text stated, "But don't distress excessively about the property itself. As I'm sure you're aware, it's situated in a remarkable neighborhood, an ideal location truly. My firm, KD Development, is perpetually seeking to acquire underperforming assets in desirable locales." David felt his heart cease its rhythm. He knew what was imminent. "We are exceedingly interested in the Pinewood Drive property." The text continued. "We will be anticipating its acquisition at a substantial reduction during the foreclosure auction. Thank you for your diligent stewardship of my future asset." That was it. That was the ultimate crushing blow. This was not merely about severing ties. This was not simply about allowing them to falter. This was a corporate acquisition of their very existence. She was not just withdrawing. She was strategically returning, employing the very business acumen they had ridiculed to procure the family inheritance from beneath them. She had been 3 moves ahead of them throughout this entire affair. They believed they were engaged in a game of checkers. She had been playing chess, and she had just declared checkmate. I stood in my penthouse suite on the 52nd floor. The metropolis of Atlanta shimmered beneath me, a tapestry of diamonds. My new abode, one I had rightfully earned, one they knew nothing about. My mobile device remained illuminated in my hand, open to the David Family Fund group chat. I reread my final message one more time. We will be anticipating its acquisition at a substantial reduction during the foreclosure auction. I savoured a slow draught of Cabernet Sauvignon. The wine was rich and smooth. I could envision their expressions, my father's astonishment, my mother's dismay, Simone's sputtering indignation. They perceived me as their emergency reserve. They saw me as their utility provider. They mistook me for their caregiver. They never apprehended that I was their financial institution, and I had just initiated foreclosure proceedings against them. I glanced at the group chat designation, David. Family fun. I emitted a brief, dry chuckle. I placed my thumb over the screen. I navigated to the group's configuration. Block this group. A confirmation prompt appeared. Are you certain? I did not hesitate. I pressed the button. It was complete. I turned my phone face down on the marble countertop. I returned to the window, took another sip of wine, and observed the cityscape I was instrumental in constructing. 2,000 miles away, amidst the harsh fluorescent glare of the Miami Airport Hotel lobby, Simone was weeping, not the artificial, manipulative tears she employed with my parents. These were genuine, raw, hysterical sobs. "What do you mean your card has been declined as well?" she shrieked at Chad. "I mean it's declined," he retorted, hurling his own wallet onto the floor. "The account is linked to your father's. It's all frozen. You've left us stranded here, Simone. Your ridiculous brand, your foolish excursion." "Me?" she screamed. "This was your podcast concept. You're utterly useless." They were merely 2 impecunious, entitled adolescents finally realizing that Keisha's bank was permanently closed. And back in Decatur, in the frigid, absolute silence of the house I had once financed for my parents, they sat on the floor. The batteries in their mobile devices had finally depleted. They were alone in the darkness. The sole illumination emanated from a feeble, flickering flashlight Brenda had unearthed. It cast elongated, distorted shadows across their faces. They appeared aged, they seemed diminished, they looked utterly terrified. My father, David, simply gazed at the blank wall, the crushing weight of his failure finally dawning upon him. He had not only forfeited his retirement savings, he had lost his home, he had lost his daughter, he had lost his integrity, he had fostered the wrong child, he had wagered everything on the favored one, and in doing so, he had annihilated the only individual who was sustaining their entire world. I finished my wine and set the glass down. As I gazed out at the lights, my phone vibrated on the counter, but it was not the blocked family discussion. It was a new incoming call, a new name. It was Michael, the lead architect for the new Midtown project, a man I had been seeing discreetly for 2 months, a man who respected my intellect and valued my time. I answered the phone, a genuine smile, the first of the evening, spread across my face. "Hi, Michael," I said, my voice warm. "I was just thinking about you." I turned my back on the past vista and faced the future. My new life was just commencing. Keisha's narrative serves as a profound illustration of self-worth. It imparts the lesson that allegiance and accountability must never be a unilateral exchange. For an extended period, she sacrificed extensively to provide for her family, only to be met with disdain and exploitation. Her family failed to recognize her sacrifices. They merely perceived her as a resource to be utilized. The story reveals that true liberation is not achieved by finally being acknowledged by those determined to misunderstand you. It arises from reclaiming one's power, establishing unambiguous boundaries, and understanding that a refusal is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-preservation. Your inherent value is determined by yourself, not by your utility to others. Consider this. In what aspects of my life am I being valued for my usefulness rather than for my intrinsic being?